For many of us, the first day of school is the unofficial new year. New classes, teachers, friends. With that, though, comes commutes, homework, before and after school activities, and some earlier bedtimes. It also, in BC, means a clampdown on cell phone use. Elementary students can't use them throughout the day, and high school students only get them between classes and at breaks. Let's get back to class now with the CBC's Yasmine Ghania. She's been speaking with students and staff at Tamanawis Secondary School in Surrey, BC's largest school district. Yasmine, thanks for being here. First, some students have very different schedules with staggered start times, and that's the case at Tamanawis. What are they?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. As you said, Surrey is the largest school district in British Columbia. It's also the fastest growing. At last count, about 80,000 students enrolled in schools here. And so Tamanawis and other schools that are the most crowded high schools are getting the staggered start. And so what that means is some students are starting around 8 in the morning, others around 9:30. So there's these two cohorts, and there are now 5 learning periods. And so some students will be attending periods 1 through 4, others periods 2 to 5. And of course, those who are starting later will have to finish later, Dan.
And so you've been talking with parents and students and staff. What do they make of this?
Yeah, parents or guardians are expressing some frustration with this new schedule, juggling this schedule, balancing childcare needs with their work schedule. And as you can imagine, some students are not happy with the earlier start time. And also, as you can imagine, some who are starting later are happy with that. So I spoke to one student in grade 12. Here's what she had to say.
My school day actually, fortunately, starts at 9:30 compared to the 8:30 from last year. That will improve my attendance by quite a bit because I'm not an early bird, not in the slightest actually. And I think having a 9:30 schedule will make me feel more refreshed.
But Dan, I also spoke to some teachers, and on top of being teachers, they're also parents. And so they too have to adjust to this schedule as they start later or some are starting earlier. But I spoke to one teacher. She teaches PE and leadership here at Tamanawis, and she says the school is being accommodating.
Going to be something that as collectively as a school, staff and students, we're going to have to adjust to and learn along the way. But for me, I feel like our school has done a really good job accommodating the needs of our staff and our students based on the different extended day schedule. I'm on the later shift, and that was accommodated to bring my kids to daycare. So I'm starting the 9:30ish shift and ending at about 3:30.
And Dan, there is a real sentiment, though, that overcrowding in Surrey schools need to be addressed. And this is something that Surrey Schools, the school district, said when it made the announcement earlier this year about the staggered schedule. It said that it's not an ideal solution. Ideally, more schools would be built, but it said that it had to look at other options as it advocates for more provincial funding. And I spoke to the principal here at Tamanawis, and he also agreed that more needs to be done to address overcrowding.
We have to deal with space in Surrey. We know that, and this is the plan. So we're moving forward on that. We really can maximize our space now. We have a 5th period, so we can push a lot of classes into that period. That spreads our student body out, so it's not as busy in the halls, it's not as busy in the classrooms. It's a change, and so anytime you do something new with people, there's some growing pains along the way. Trying to get used to it, getting the kids here a little bit earlier. Our staff's going to be getting here a little bit earlier, and with the 2 different schedules, there's not that same community that we normally feel, so we're going to have to do some work on bringing our kids together.
Yeah, so Dan, as you heard, there are some growing pains and some adjustments for the school year.
I mean, the other major change coming this year in BC, new restrictions on cell phones. How is that going to work?
Yeah, Dan, it's a major change also happening in Ontario as kids are, being more glued to their phones, adults too. It's not just children and students, but yeah, so even though the province has issued mandates to all 60 school districts here in British Columbia, it will be up to each individual district to enforce it. So naturally, it will look different for different schools. And as you said off the top, yes, elementary schools, it'll be bell to bell. You can't have your cell phones. In high schools, it'll be more flexible. Sometimes you can use them if it makes sense, like during digital literacy lessons. But yeah, I spoke to one student who you heard off the top, and she was excited to get more FaceTime, not digitally, with her students. So yeah, also a bit of mixed reaction there too, Dan.
And what are you hearing about enforcement? Because somebody's going to have to enforce these rules.
Yeah, absolutely. So it will be largely up to teachers and other school staff to enforce it. But yeah, as I mentioned, there is some excitement as well, especially this new cohort of students going into high school because a lot of their school was online because of the pandemic. So this one student that you heard off the top, and I'll play a clip right now, she's excited to get to know her classmates more because of the cell phone ban.
A lot of students are definitely upset about that, and I know some teachers are definitely happy about that because they do seem distracting, especially in the classroom. And I feel like when you have free time in the class that the teacher gave to work on an assignment, most people tend to gravitate towards their phone, and I know a lot of teachers don't appreciate that, and their marks don't appreciate that either. I'm a bit excited. I'm a bit grateful for it, actually. That means that I get to communicate with some students, some classmates that I haven't talked to before, instead of being shunned out by a screen in their face and me having to just kind of sit there.
So yeah, as you heard, there's some excitement, but as well as the PE teacher that you heard from earlier, she says that it will be difficult in enforcing it. Take a listen.
From looking around the school and talking last week and this week with my colleagues, it seems like a lot of the classrooms have spaces provided for those cell phones when the kids walk into the classroom. So yeah, enforcing it and making sure that they aren't a distraction in the classroom.
Do you feel like that will be difficult?
I mean, with anything, I think it's going to be a hit or miss, but as you continue the school year and start it off good and with a positive note, I think the students are going to, go with the flow and see the positivity in it.
So some positivity, some growing pains as teachers and students, parents and guardians adapt to all these new changes during this school year, Dan.
Yasmine, Ghania, we appreciate your time. Thanks very much. The CBC's Yasmine, Ghania live outside Tamanawis Secondary in Surrey. Very different start for a lot of students.